Hello everyone, Tactical Lich here. Got a meme army build to showcase made up of the Ogre DLC units. I call this the Gold Digging Yetees, as I find that the Yetees actually pairs really well with the Ogre Paymaster. The Yetees themselves gives a -8 melee defense aura to enemy units, and then the Ogre Paymaster buffs nearby friendly units by +8 melee attack, and that is a total of 16 melee stat difference, -8 to enemies and +8 to your own troops, making your troops hit much harder against the enemy target. Other than that, we have even more melee stat buffs and debuffs here, coming in with the Cash Cascade on the Ogre Paymaster, plus another 24 melee attack to friendly troops, and the Butcher of Beasts. Yes, we are not bringing any healing magic, just gonna provide even more melee stats modifier with the Curse of Aura Air, -24 melee defense and attack, and if we have any leftover magic, using some Wizen's Wild Form for buffs as well. Might be helpful to get a little bit more weapon strength and armor. And that's it for the core of the army here, the Yetees and the 2 buffing characters, and then other than that, 2 more Yetees to really maximize our benefit from those stat buffs and debuffs. A front line of Nobblers backed up by Pigback Riders, one of them the Piggyback Knights Regiment of Renown. They're backed up by even more Ogre units here, a line of Ogre Bulls, 4 of them in fact, and 4 more units of Blood Vultures. On the other side of the battlefield, our opponent Garage here also going with the Ogre Kingdoms. Yes, we are doing an Ogre Civil War. A front line of Pigback Riders, one of them the Piggyback Knights as well. A second line of Nobbler Trappers backed up by 2 Man-Eaters with great weapons with their solid melee stats of 40 and 42. With their powerful weapon strength and anti-large bonus, they are the best tool you'll get in an Ogre Civil War, though we shall see how they will handle those melee buffs and debuff stacking. Other than that, my opponent also bring in a couple Yhetee units, one of them the Ample Peak Greybacks, and some Saber Tusks on the side for mobility. Let's start the battle with a bit of fast forward here. Both sides don't have any long range artillery or skirmishing firepower, so it is just gonna be a straight up melee brawl. I am a bit more cautious with my Blood Vultures though, since I do want to spot those hidden Nobbler Trappers before advancing. Now that I'm seeing those Nobbler Trappers, I'm throwing in the Piggyback Knights, the Nobbler Infantry, just going into a melee clash against the enemy unit. Now, Piggyback Knights on both sides are winning their engagement against the enemy Nobblers, but here comes the Man-Eaters with great weapons, piling onto my poor Ogre Bulls, absolutely smashing them with the initial charge impact. Let's slow down a bit here to talk about the buffs and debuffs on my end. I'm dropping a Cash Cascade, a little bit of mistake here. The ability automatically locks onto a nearby unit here. So unfortunately, I was not able to drop the buff in the middle or between the 2 blobs here to cover both blobs. Especially, I need those buffs for the Yetees here, but alas, that is still fine here. We should still be able to overpower the enemy Man-Eaters. Now, the Yetees have 46 melee attack thanks to the Glorious Gold from the Ogre Paymaster, while the Man-Eaters themselves melee defense down to 34 due to the Yetees melee defense debuff aura. On top of that, I should be able to do a little bit more damage against the enemy Pigback Riders and perhaps even the Ample Peak Greybacks there with the melee attack buff. On the far side, I am dropping in an Overcast Curse of Aura Air shortly onto these enemy Pigback Riders, Yetees, and Saber Tusk packs there, nuking down their melee stats down to a puny 0 melee defense. Yetees also down to 2 melee defense and 13 attack, so I should be able to overpower them eventually. Especially with all the green Ogre units in the vicinity, these red Ogre units would not hold forever. Normally, the Man-Eaters are the superior combatants. They are easily beating up the Yetees, but over here, because of all the melee stat modification, the Yetees and by extension, the Pigback Riders nearby that receives all the same buffs and debuffs are trading really well into the Man-Eaters, especially when there's a massacre, further boosting their melee attack and also weapon damage. Of course, the Man-Eaters are doing great damage in return, but they're taking a lot of damage in the process, being forced to use their Troll Guts on these Man-Eaters to keep them alive in the fight. Now, unfortunately, on this left flank here, the Ample Peak Greybacks have broken my Nobbler Infantry and the Ogre Bulls, so they're able to deliver a rear charge onto my Yetees, terrifying them away, but the Pigback Riders, they are still holding, still having over half HP, getting the extra leadership, and at the same time, those Nobbler Trappers at the back there have been flooded by my Blood Vultures, and also I'm punching through with some Ogre Bulls as well, just beating up the enemy missile support. Now, some Piggyback Knights who have returned from routing early. I think they just got shot up pretty hard by all those Nobbler Trapper focused fire and have been driven back now that they are back in the fight. We are charging onto the Ample Peak Greybacks, who are now suffering from a massive debuff of those Curse of Aura Air. Combined with the disorientated counter effect of the piggyback knights, dropping their melee stats down to 15 attack and 7 melee defense, so these ample peak greatbacks are no longer fighting with any effectiveness and are actually flooded by a ton of anti-large units. Even the green nobblers here, getting some attack buffs from the Ogre Paymaster, are getting some consistent hits onto these red Ogre units. There's a second unit of man-eaters who have beaten some Yetis here, joining the fight, but they are also being nerfed by the Curse of Onrai Air. They should be able to hold, but the ample peak greatbacks are on the verge of death. On the far side, I finally crushed the enemy's left flank, so I have some Yetis freed up, now able to reinforce other parts of the battlefield. My opponent tried to intercept them with some tattered man-eaters here. Normally they would trade great into the Yetis, but they themselves are just so beat up and also being flanked by a bunch of blood vultures. What's left of the unit is getting quickly cut down and overwhelmed. The healthy man-eaters with great weapons are stuck in the horde of blood vultures, nobblers, just a lot of numbers and bodies, which these anti-large man-eaters are not exactly great at dealing with. Butcher being targeted by the Bruiser, not being a dedicated fighter character, he's just gonna turn belly and start running for his life. Hopefully some friendly units are there to save him. Man-eaters with great weapons are receiving a meat feast, trying to hold their HP high, but I'm coming in with even more resources, just flooding my opponent's elite unit here. Blood vultures, nobblers, pickback riders, they're all surrounding and slowly but surely chipping away the health of these man-eaters. Actually not that slow either, because all the units near the Paymaster and the Yetis are benefiting from the buff and debuff combo. The regrouped Yetis are applying the -8 melee defense on the man-eaters, while the piggyback knights and other of my green ogre units are all being boosted by the Ogre Paymaster and the tier 2 massacre ability. If my opponent didn't throw in a towel, chances are the man-eaters would have been overwhelmed by all these juiced up chaff units. Now this build is all about manipulating the enemy's melee stats here, dropping in those Curse of Onrai Air or dropping in the melee buffs from the Ogre Paymaster to help your units overpower the enemies in melee combat, especially with the Yetis beating up enemy monsters and helping the Nobblers, Pickback Riders and whatnot as well. Now you don't necessarily need to use Curse of Onrai Air, but it certainly helps. Otherwise, you can use the Massacre Army ability or other spells at the Ogre's army disposal now that they have more Lures of Magic. The Lure of Death Soul Blight's armor debuff and the Lure of Great Mo Bull Gorger's attack buffs can be two good options, especially Lure of Great Mo allows you to access healing. I often like to combine this build with a couple Lead Belchers as well, just to provide a little bit more anti-infantry capabilities to clear out the enemy's spears and halberds, instead of fighting them in melee and taking anti-large damage. Speaking of Lead Belchers, the Yetis are actually very good at protecting these Ogre missiles with their slowing debuffs. Having the aura of Frost minus 15% speed and the 30% Frostbite contact effect, the Yetis naturally have 45% of speed debuff if they can get a hit on their targets. Combined with the Curse of Onrai Air does 70% of speed reduction, even the Pegasus Knights are slowed down to infantry speed. With no melee stats to take the fight and no speed to get away, the Pegasus Knights are sitting ducks in front of the charging Nobblers and Yetis. You might have already seen this little bit of battle on my channel before or on Daftplay's channel. Just thought it would be nice to give this battle a shout out because this is what gave me the idea of the Gold Digger Yetis build. Now sometimes a big single entity might still able to push through the Yetis and try to get away, but this is where you hit them with a Dismember army ability. The Yetis plus the 60% Dismember speed debuff basically caps out the speed reduction you can put on a unit. The Yetis can then reform their formations around Scarbrand, who are slowed down to only 10 speed, continue to keep him trapped among enemy units. As I said before, you don't have to bring a Lore of Beast in this army build. The core really is just the Ogre Paymaster and the Yetis. You're free to just switch out the Spellcaster, and this time I just brought a Fire Belly for the Burning Head onto enemy Marauders and Nurglings. Definitely would be fun to experiment more with other spell combos, for example, the rather powerful Fate of Buna and Mo Shard combo. Or perhaps just get some Troll Guts for healing would be nice as well. Now unfortunately, this build does have a pretty glaring weakness. The Yetis themselves are extremely vulnerable, not having high armor at all. They can overpower elite monsters like even the Butchers of Kalkengard in melee with the right support. The problem is that as long as the enemies have enough spears and missiles, they can just whittle down the Yetis throughout the course of battle. The combat of attrition definitely does not favor the Yetis. In my way of playing it with the Lore of Beast, we don't have access to a lot of healing outside of the Meat Feast ability. So this build definitely suffer against sustained combat and missile spam. Bringing Troll Guts instead of Lore of Beast can help, but in the end the Yetis are still a rather fragile monster. GG to my opponent Garage, and let's wrap up this video in this post-battle screen. Now, the Yetees here didn't actually earn back that much value. This one did manage to earn back some decent value trading into those man-eaters. However, they did get recharged by the Ample Peak Great Backs and got routed early, so they were still not able to earn back their value. But instead, the buffs and debuffs combo actually benefited the Pigback Riders the most, helping them trade a lot better into the now softened up targets, and also they themselves having their attack juiced up, earning back their value and then some more. Of course, we don't talk about the Piggyback Knights because they are broken as hell, but still, both sides have Piggyback Knights, so I guess that's a fair fight. The Ogre Bulls here did some okay work here, also benefiting from all those buffs and debuffs. Same goes for the Nobblers, some of them actually earned back twice their own value. Blood Vultures did a great job shutting down those Nobbler trappers and then swarming the remaining Ogre Kingdoms army on the other side of the battlefield, while the characters here mostly just there to provide buffs and debuffs and not doing damage. On the other side, for the Red Ogre Kingdoms army, normally Man-Eaters would excel in this kind of Ogre Civil War carrying this matchup, but one of the Man-Eaters actually got attrition down by the sheer amount of chaff, and the buff and debuff combo was not able to get any good trade, not even into the enemy Yetees here. While the other Man-Eaters being surrounded by the sheer amount of chaff I have in the late game, they would just get eventually dragged down in this kind of prolonged battle of attrition. The rest of the Red Ogre army here didn't actually get that much damage value either, because of the buffs and debuffs making them much less effective in melee combat, and also Pigback Riders. A lot of them were fighting infantry-sized Nobblers, so their anti-large bonus was not that effective. Nobbler Trappers got shut down by the Blood Vultures, and the Sabertusk plus Yetees here. Not exactly the greatest combatant on their own, and just getting swarmed by a sheer amount of Ogre Bulls, Nobblers, Pigback Riders, and Blood Vultures in the end. The characters here, the Bruiser didn't get any character duel, as my Butcher was just running away from the Bruiser, while the Slaughtermaster is only there for healing. I do have to say, one thing I really like about the Omens of Destruction DLC is that a lot of the characters they're introducing in the patch actually focuses on melee buffs and debuffs there, instead of going for the damaging abilities. So there's a lot more synergy between the characters and the unit. The characters actually help the units help their army to fight better, instead of just trying to do all the work on their own. And as a result, there are a lot more interesting combos you can figure out with these kind of new tools. For example, the Ogre Paymaster here can stack his attack buffs with something like Bull Gorger on the Lore of the Great Maul, or you can use the Ogre Paymaster to increase your unit's damage while reducing enemy armor with something like the Soul Blade with the Lore of Death, or just like here, Curse of Armor Air plus the buffs from the Paymaster as well. Similarly, Greenskins and Corn are getting some really nice additional tools and can open up with a lot of new options, new combos on their army. But yeah, for now, that's going to be it for the Gold Digger Yetees build. I hope you all enjoyed this meme build of melee buff and debuff stacking. And if you want to see more Total War Warhammer multiplayer content, be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.